Welcome to HearthCrafting, a Buttons Grove Homestead podcast with Heidi Snellgrove. Good morning. Come join me with a cup of coffee on my front porch while I take a breather from what's already been a busy morning to visit with you guys. My name's Heidi Snellgrove. I've thought for years about doing a YouTube video vlog to go with my blog, but to be honest, editing video seems like a lot, and I already have way too much on my plate. And like most girls, I guess, I really don't love the way I look on camera. So we've ended up with a podcast. The goal of this for me was to share real life. I talk a lot, both in my blog and giving speeches in the local area for nonprofit groups, about the need to get back to basics and some of the fundamentals that our busy lives jettisoned in the terms of cooking and getting the family together and running a house. It seems like in the 70s and 80s and 90s, that became what you did if you didn't have a job, instead of treating running a house like a job. In truth, I think most women or most adults have more than one job. They have the job they do to earn money, and then they have the job of running a family in a house. But we've stopped treating it like a job and started treating it more like a hobby. And that actually causes it to be harder to do than if we treated it with the professionalism that most of us go after our careers with. So I started using that kind of emphasis about 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago now, on my home. And with that, I came up with the term HearthCrafting, which is about intentionally creating the home that I want. And that's what I write about. That in conjunction with something called scratch cooking. We'll talk more about those terms as the podcast continues over time. But today I just wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction to me. I'm a busy woman. I work freelance from the house, which a lot of my friends think means I have a lot of free time. That's hardly the case. I also homeschool a 16-year-old autistic child who needs a little more hands-on care than the average 16-year-old, but is a joy to work with. In addition to that, I run this household, which is a family of 3. Garden, grow some of our own food, and cook using the most basic ingredients that I can. On average, I cook 2 to 3 meals a day in our house. So this is kind of busy. Why do it all? Because I've found that by gardening and cooking from scratch, I cut our bills down. And that enables me to spend less time doing the freelance work. There were other times in my life. Now remember, I'm kind of coming to the end of my career life at this point. I've been the 60 hours a week career woman and cooked and gardened in the midst of that. It can be done. I've also been the very career-oriented, married with no children. I've had all of those phases in my life. And through that, gardening and cooking has been a foundational part of it. But it's changed over the years, not just because my life has changed, but because our way of dealing with food has changed in the last 30 years. Back in prior to the year 2000, I used to do something we called batch cooking. It was the vogue for a young home-focused woman in those days who also had a career. And that meant that a friend of mine and I got together and we spent a day and a half cooking 30 meals that we piled into our freezers. They weren't always the healthiest meals. They weren't always the tastiest meals, truth be known. But back 30 years ago, as long as you got food on the table, it was considered a win. It didn't necessarily have to be great, and your family ate it. Our relationship in this country with food has changed. We actually want food that tastes good. You can watch Top Chef Junior or Master Chef Junior and realize that even 8, 9, and 10-year-olds have a palate and can talk to you about whether or not you've brought clear taste to the table. That's great. It's also a little more challenging. I don't batch cook like that anymore. I do batch cook, but it's a different kind of batch cooking. And we'll talk about that. It's more batch prepping than it is batch cooking. So there are two types of podcasts that I'm going to be doing. A weekly sum up with topical, which is kind of a traditional podcast, which is what this is right now as our intro, but going forward it'll be talking about the topics of the day and what's going on. But then I'm also going to do a second one, which is where I invite you into my kitchen and actually record as I'm doing batch cooks and working in the kitchen so that you can see how I put it all together. Yes, I realize it would probably be better on video, but then I would have to slow down and actually be neat about it, and I don't always. I don't spend hours in my kitchen. I don't have hours to spend in my kitchen. I do things 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and that's what I want to share with you in such a way that you can get comfortable doing similar to improve the quality of food that you produce at home without having to buy as much outsourced. This saves money, it provides better quality for your family, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot of time. And that's really the key to this. That's the thing I want to share with you guys. So what's going on in the world today? In my world. Yesterday, I did a huge batch cook. With Laura's help, I produced several quarts of enchilada sauce, of tomato sauce, made a month's worth of ghee for the household, as well as cooking a dinner dish that was a new dish that didn't do that well. If you want to find out what went wrong, check out Kitchen Failures and look for enchilada casserole on my blog. And you can see where things went horribly wrong on a new recipe. Because even after 40 years in the kitchen, sometimes things don't go as planned. And I don't mind sharing that with you guys because I think it's an important lesson to know that it's okay for some things not to go quite well. This was a case not of a failed recipe, but of a failed to pay attention cook. And that happens too. Out in the world today, we're still playing stay at home with the COVID-19 nonsense. Sorry, I'm not a huge fan. Waiting to find out who our president's going to be. It's amazing to me that in the year 2020, it takes longer to get election results than it did in the 1980s. It's bizarre to me that they haven't figured out. I mean, every college campus out there has figured out how Scantron works. So why exactly is it that we can't figure out how to count an election in this digital age? But I mailed my ballot in just like everybody else, and I will give my county props because I did get a notice that they had received it successfully. And there we are. And here we wait. I'm definitely on the Biden side of things. And if you're a Trump sympathizer, that's fine. No hard feelings here. I just don't think he has the courage to be president. I worry about what my teenager posts on social media. I don't want to have to worry about what my president posts on social media. That's my personal opinion for what it's worth. I'm sitting in a sea of grow bags full of my winter vegetables, including cucumber, 3 kinds of beans, some squash, some watermelon, and some loofah. I've also got some tomato and lettuce around me, and I'm looking forward to getting the bounty of some of this harvest. My herbs are growing. The chive and the echinacea have both taken off real well. I've got carrots started. All of this are tasks that I do, usually not taking more than 20 minutes at a time to work, and most days it's closer to 5 minutes in around everything else that goes on. I'm looking out on a yard that I do need to get out here and mow. I'm a dinosaur with that. I actually use a push mower, the non-gas, non-electric kind. It's great exercise, but I do need to get out and mow the front yard. There's a cat sitting at the end of my driveway guarding the house. Not real sure why, but he felt empowered to go do that when I sat down in the chair next to him. I live in a quiet Central Florida community. I like this place. We're an hour and 45 minutes from the crazy of Disney. We're an hour and 45 minutes from the beach, both directions, and an hour and 45 minutes from Georgia. To me, this is, of all the places I've lived, and I've lived around the world, but also in most parts of the United States at this point, and this is my favorite. And that's my world. And I hope to share more of it with you in the coming weeks. Until then, check out the blog for new recipes. I'm doing a series right now on the mother sauces and how I make use of them. In fact, I'm going to make one today. My 16-year-old told me this morning that she wanted homemade mac and cheese for dinner tonight. So she and I are going to be in the kitchen later, and as part of her home ec, part of homeschooling, she's going to make her first bechamel. Until next time, may your coffee or tea always be the right temperature, and there always be laughter in your home. I enjoyed our time together. Bye from Heidi. See you next time.